All right, we now have joining us on the Soccer Hour. It is Jamon Moore, Quakes Epicenter. Jamon, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Hey Ted, how you doing? Really excited to be back for another season.
Hey, man, it's been a while since we've done this, but we've had two Quakes games to look at so far. I guess what's the bigger takeaway from you after the first two games? Is it the come from behind win in game two, or is it the heartbreaking loss in game one? Because I think we did learn a lot about the team in two of these games, which we will break down momentarily. But I wanted your 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the Thiago Almeida bangers that really hurt the Quakes and caused them to lose their first game was those were really low quality opportunities. And the thing that I took away from game one was how well Lucci and the team did, and Lucci with his tactical adjustments and
Mhm.
really kind of forcing the only available shots that Atlanta United were able to take through most of that second half were outside the box, long range, speculative efforts. They have players to try them, Almada being one of them.
Yeah.
And so knowing that they have the kind of this way about them where they will take those speculative shots if you don't give them space, he was comfortable with them taking it. Of course, when you add up the probabilities, getting back-to-back goals in stoppage time like Almada did is basically it's a 1 in 400 to 500 chance. It's a crazy low chance. And so, if you're Lucci, you're heartbroken, but you also should feel very good about that you were able to work the game plan the way you wanted to. And I think that confidence was important coming into game two,
Mhm.
because even when they got down, they were able to kind of make a couple adjustments. They dropped Jackson Yule back a bit deeper to be able to help be able to play out with Guerrezo, and negated the press that was giving them trouble in the first half and led to the Vancouver goal. And we're able to make those adjustments. And one of the things that I remarked in our post game show, and it's really kind of stuck with me, just the thought of it, is that we've just seen a coach of the San Jose Earthquakes make adjustments at halftime
Mhm.
tactically and be able to change a game. And due to the belief in the team and being able to do that, they were able to go out there and get those couple of goals. And for me, that's a big step forward, because it's something that I felt we didn't see with Matias Almeida. If it was happening with Alex Cabello, it wasn't obvious it was happening with Cabello. I think the Quakes kind of had this mindset of, we're going to play our way, and we're going to try to, particularly at home, we're going to try to get the opposition, we're going to try to impose ourselves on the opposition.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to be smarter than that. And I think Lucci was smarter than that.
I wanted to go back to Carlos Grueso in game one versus game two, because he's obviously the big offseason acquisition, the Ecuadorian international designated player. In game one, he wasn't really involved in the ball a lot, but I thought it was very interesting to note that Atlanta seemed to stay away from his orbit by
Mm-hmm.
design. It was like they did not want to go in near him. Vancouver did go a little bit at him more, but he came up with some great tackles, came up with some great moments, some emergency defending, one time going to ground. But it was really interesting to watch the impact he's made on two games in two unique ways.
Yeah, he's obviously a multifaceted player, and he's going to be able to work within various strategies that Lucci comes up with for a particular game. If you need him to be able to play out, he can play out. Now, he struggled playing out a bit in that first half, as I mentioned, but a lot of that had to do with just not having the right support around him,
Mm-hmm.
because they were pushing players higher up the pitch. Once they dropped back into support, it negated that whole issue. Defensively, he is someone that is one of the, I would say, 3 or 4 defensive midfielders in the league that teams are going to game plan around
Yeah.
him being, in that defensive midfield area, protecting the back line. They don't want to play through him. They want to play around him. We did definitely see that with Atlanta United, particularly once the Quakes started to pack it in. They were going to go to the wings because that was the only available route available. And part of that is Grezzo, in the middle. In the past, no one has felt threatened by the Quakes in the middle of the pitch in terms of their defense in the last 2, 3, 4 years. And all of a sudden now you've got Jonathan Mensah there. Rodriguez looks like almost a different player than what we saw at the end of last season.
Yeah.
Now having Jonathan Mensah beside him and having Carlos Carrezo in front of him. And he's getting confident, and you can see him, trying some stuff we didn't see last season. And, having Carrezo is a big part of that presence that gives those center backs the confidence to be able to do what they need to do. And no one wants a piece of that. You want to try to play around that if you have to.
In terms of the center backs, let's talk about Mensah and Rodriguez. Mensah, this was not a part of our discussion, more than a few weeks ago because Nathan tears his ACL, and then we've got Mensah coming in, and it's interesting to watch how there has not been emergency defending back there. It seems like they are situationally set up, and you can make the argument about Mensah coming in against Atlanta and setting up the set piece, but I didn't think it was egregious in any way, shape, or form. But it's really been unique to watch the way that Mensah has settled in so quickly. It speaks to his quality, and then the way Rodriguez has played next to him.
Yeah, if you go back to that Atlanta game, and I mentioned they're only able to play out to the wings. They weren't really able to play into the middle, and when they did, they got into trouble and turned the ball over because the Quakes looked nice and compact. Again, so I can't believe we're saying this about an Earthquakes team after the last 4 years, but they look nice and compact in the middle there. And then if you think about the Vancouver game, the only chances Vancouver managed were ones where they were able to win the ball up high from their press and able to transition very quickly. And that's the only way that they were able to play through the middle because everyone's scrambling at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it is nice, as you said, in the second half, Lucci made those adjustments and they stopped looking so desperate. I hate emergency defending. I think a lot of players, that have to play in those positions would agree. They don't want to be in those emergency defending situations either. And credit, to them for making the adjustments and, getting back to the game plan in the second half.
Yeah, no, it was interesting to watch. In terms of Cade Cowell and Benji Gacanovic on the left wing, I thought Cade had his moments in game 2 where he looked like he was making things happen, but it didn't follow through with the scoring opportunity. But what's your take on that left wing situation right now? Because I think that's one that people are waiting to see how it works out. The preseason, I think everyone thought Benji was going to be the starter at left wing, but that's not the way it's obviously worked out through at least the first 2 games.
Well, it seemed like Cade had gone to the national team and had that performance against Serbia. And it was almost like, how are you going to deny this player the ability to step onto the pitch for you every single game, right? What he can do when he has the ability to go forward with the ball and take on players. We saw a bit of it in the first half where he took on 3 players from Vancouver and got the better of them and got off a shot and created a corner out of it. That just shows the talent that Cade Cowell has, but you can't deny Benji Gacanovic either. In the second half, he knew he had a goal. It took an incredible save to be able to deny him a goal. Should have been probably a 3-1 game. He's going to definitely felt hard done by that. He looked much better, much more himself than what we saw against Atlanta United, where the Quakes were packing it in, not really trying to get forward. And when Benji got on the ball, had no support whatsoever to be able to get forward. Very different situation in game 2. He was quite dangerous coming off the bench. That's what you want to see. Regardless of the order that you put him out there, whether it's Benji first and then Cade or Cade then Benji, you want to see that we're going to force you to play a certain way, and then we're going to change a pace. Not really change a pace. It's just play differently. But players with different skill sets, they're both very pacey. And be able to now throw a fresh guy at you that's going to give you a different look, that can only be good for the Quakes. The combination of the two scored 10 goals last season. A lot of people overlook that and think the Quakes need, a new left winger. And a lot of the fans were asking for a designated player on as a left winger in the offseason. And I said, I just don't see it. You have Cade, you have Benji. They scored 10 goals together last season. The top winger in MLS, non-penalty, was Paul Arriola with 10 goals. So you're getting a really good production out of the left wing. And of course, we haven't even talked about Christian Espinoza on the right yet.
And Espinoza, I know that people are going to talk about some other names in terms of wingers, but his production, other than 2021 when he had a little bit of a step back, I mean, all the rest of the time, he has been absolutely phenomenal. maybe the best value in Major League Soccer right now. And not only has he picked up where he left off last year, it seems like he's getting even better still. I mean, that connection between him and Jabo is automatic. I mean, I don't want to try and be hyperbolic, but the fact that they've already connected twice this year, the fact that Espinosa was in on both goals in game number 2. I mean, Christian Espinosa is one of the more unheralded players in this league. And at some point, people are going to have to acknowledge what he's doing.
Yeah, he's 3 assists shy now of Shea Salinas' record that literally just got set a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that he's been with the team, just 4 years and really kind of been able to get to this level. I agree. I think that they've got that kind of like understanding that Shea and Wando did. And when we, think about that particular combo, they go together like Batman and Robin, like Jordan and Pippen. It's that type of way. I think we are seeing now that same type of understanding of each other and playing off of each other between Abobasi and Espinosa. It took a few games last season and then it got rolling.
Yeah.
And now we're really seeing it. Like it's coming out of the gate that way. Yeah. I mean, obviously Abobasi is probably not going to score 34 goals in every single game this season. Espinosa is probably not going to get 34 assists in every game this season. But, you can't deny that they're going to probably both have a very successful season because of each other.
Well, and then the thing that we'll probably look at, though, is that Jabo will get a look with the national team, especially as they look for that guy that can put the ball in the back of the net. I mean, that's something that's clearly been an issue for the U.S. And, Jabo will make more of a case for himself. Who knows who the coach is going to be for the U.S., but I would imagine that they would listen to Lucci, even if it would not exactly help the Earthquakes to see Jabo not with the team for any, extended length of time, because he is, again, like last year, like you said, it took him a little bit of time to get rolling, but now he's rolling already this year. Again, the thing that really strikes me is that this doesn't look like a team that's playing like they're under a new regime. It doesn't look like it's, week 1, week 2 in terms of individual performances. Cohesiveness, still some work to do, but they seem to understand the tactics. They seem to be doing what they're asked to do, and the guys are performing as we are expecting them to. I mean, that is maybe my big takeaway after 2 games.
Yeah. And also, they're not being asked to do something entirely different than they were asked to do under Alex Cabello. Mm-hmm. So there is a bit of the momentum of last season of okay, we played a similar formation. We played a similar style. We didn't really have the rest defensive structure that we wanted to have behind the ball, mm-hmm. To be able to deal with counterattacks and such. But now that's being put into place. But from an attacking side, there's a lot of similarities between the styles. It's still, try to possess the ball, try to play it vertical when the opportunity presents itself. We do hear a lot from Lucci about how they do want to be progressive in their style of play. They do want to try to get in behind the defense, go around the defense, go over the defense, whatever it takes, in order to be able to get in behind. And that's not dissimilar than what they were trying to do last season. I just think that one of the things that Seattle, as an example, is noticing already this season is they've switched to a structure which is a little bit more positionally oriented, which allows you to have players in the right positions to win second balls, which is a big factor in the second half against Vancouver. It allows you to have players in the right position to be able to win a ball, be able to transition, go forward, take advantage of mistakes. And, that's something that you want to be able to do, but not if the ball goes the other direction, all of a sudden, it's a breakaway for the other team either.
Speaking of positional sequences for the Earthquakes, we have seen, much like we first saw a few years ago with Nick Lima when he was getting call-ups with the national team, Trauco, we've seen drop into an almost hybrid 6 role in the first couple of games. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because that's something that I specifically associate with the national team. And obviously, the Earthquakes head coach was the assistant to Greg Berhalter.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think both of them like to do is they like to get that outside back when the ball is on the opposite side, to tuck inside and provide more structure, more support in the center of the pitch. Mm-hmm. That helps you in both ways. That helps you in the case of a turnover. It helps you have that structure to be able to, if you're going to give up space, you want to give up space, on the wings, not through the middle of the pitch, right? So you're okay with that weak side outside back, tucking in a bit, because there's time usually to recover if the ball is immediately turned over and switched to the other side. And so you can see that some aspects of that, Greg Berhalter style of play are making their way into Lucci ball now. And one of the things that you can get is that that outside back tucking in next to the defensive midfielder, and basically having two defensive midfielders in an area of the pitch where it would be important to do so. One of the ways that helped the Quakes quite a bit is now you've got Trauco is no slouch on the ball. He's pretty creative. And so from an attacking side, it gives the Quakes almost like another weapon that they can use in the middle while not necessarily losing the outside back on the strong side.
Mm-hmm.
But when that ball switches across, Trauco, and Paul Marie the same way, can both get involved in the attack. They both got the ability to create from just outside the box. They've shown in the past. Paul Marie hit one of the best goals in MLS last year because he was in the right place, right time, in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And was able to hit it. And that's not the only time that he's been able to create something out of that center area. I noticed that sometimes Marie was also underlapping in the game and getting inside and giving space to Espinoza on the outside. And now you have to force the center backs and the outside backs to make a decision. Stick with Christian Espinoza, follow the runner, worry about Abobasi behind you, worry about the trailing runner, potentially of Yule behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot going on there. And if you are the defensive side against the Earthquakes, you're going to have to be forced to make some decisions. And it only takes a couple of mistakes a game, to result in a ball in the back of the net for the Quakes.
You bring up Yule and Montero, and that's something that I've been very pleased with Yule. We'll touch on him in a second. Montero really fascinated me because in the Vancouver game, he just kind of looked off his game overall in the first half. And then later, it seemed like he was able to get involved in kind of the same way in game one in Atlanta. It was like he was a little uncomfortable early on. He may have taken that knock, upper body, shoulder, that may have been bothering him. Then later on got involved in the game. This is something that I'm waiting to see what it evolves into, because I think that every player wants to be able to give you a complete performance for however they're on the pitch. But it's like, if Montero gets rolling at the start of a game, I think combined with what he's doing and the interesting way that Jackson's been used as a runner in the flat, not quite on the wing, but just on the outside of the circle, going from the Quakes zone to the offensive zone, it's going to free up Montero to do a lot of things. And so that next aspect of the attack, to me, I'm very excited to see what that'll turn into.
Yeah, one of the things that Lucci mentioned when we asked him about it after the game was that, look, we didn't play our best half in the first half, but we generated a lot of chances
right
from the things that we did do. And so he was very heartened by the fact that if we play poorly, we still have the opportunity to be in the game. We still have the opportunity to score a goal. We still have the opportunity to be able to walk away with a result, even if in games that they play poorly. Contrast that to Earthquakes teams recently. When they've played poorly, they tend to get blown out. So, I agree with Lucci. I think
blocking it out of my memory. 7-1 never
exactly.
happened.
We need to see a little bit more, particularly on the road. How this team performs under different types of adversity, and giving up that first goal, if it happens on the road, in getting back into games, is more difficult than it is at home. But yes, I would agree with you. Montero hasn't not necessarily been the best version of Montero that we've seen. And that can only be good, because, the Quakes, as those players, get into the games, and, a player like Montero has the quality that I don't think you concern yourself with him long term. Yeah. You expect that he's going to be able to find his form. And in this case, it just took a half. It just took maybe a tactical adjustment to be able to get him into more favorable positions. It just also, they had to realize the way that Vancouver was structuring that low block, they weren't going to find the passes that Montero was trying to find. And they had to approach the second half differently. And again, credit to Lucci, credit to the team. They needed to make some adjustments, and they did it.
Let's go to Daniel before we talk more tactics. We haven't seen that much of him. I feel like he came up with a big stop last week, low towards the post. And then, in game one, they didn't get many good looks, and Araujo was sailing balls, and, even on the penalty, went wide to his left. I feel like there's been a lot of talk about that second goal. Maybe he could have stopped it. I don't know. He got a hand on it. That was my take on that. Is like, it's brilliance from Almada. Like, sometimes guys like that are going to elevate and just do something that's stupid good, for lack of a better term. And like, you can't really defend that. But, in terms of what you've seen from Daniel in the first two games, in terms of his distribution, in terms from how he's, set up, like what's your take up to this point?
I think it's going to take him getting used to the league,
Mhm.
the style of play, the type of environments that he's been in have also been, quite a bit different. So, playing in a dome on turf in
Yeah.
front of 65,000 and then coming back playing outdoor. And let's be honest, one side of that stadium can be a little bit dark at times. So it's a very different environment at PayPal than he faced in the first game.
Mhm.
I do think it's going to take him some time to adjust to the league in general. But again, they've Aiden Brown and the coaching staff have decided that right now he's starting ahead of JT Marcinkowski, and that means that they seem dedicated to allowing him the time to kind of figure it out.
Mhm.
Could he have done better? On any of those goals? I tend to defer to goalkeepers to kind of inform some of my opinions outside of the data on goalkeeping. Most of the goalkeepers that I've talked to don't, fault him for those goals, and
Yeah.
the fact that he was able to get a hand on a ball that came over the wall when he's very much screened and it has to react late and had to take 2 steps to be able to get to it. Was he cheating to his right? Well, maybe, but as a goalkeeper, don't you want to trust your wall? Like, there's very few players in MLS that can get a ball up and down over a wall the way that Almada did there.
Yeah.
So I don't blame him necessarily for cheating, because he's like the rest of us playing the probabilities there.
Right.
The chance of that happening was very low. I think some people weren't too happy with the way that he came out on the Vancouver goal. He kind of got caught in a little bit in between. It was kind of a late 1v1. He started to come out and just didn't adjust to the situation. I just don't think we've necessarily seen the right situations in which to make a decision yet in terms of Daniel. But he does have a career, 80% save percentage,
Mhm.
which is about 70, which is about 10% more than JT, who's more around 70%. And he did save in 2 seasons in his last club, saved 8 goals over expected for both of those teams. And JT was under expected last year. So I understand the reasons for all of this.
Right.
I just think that in this case, he's probably going to need a little bit more time to make adjustments.
One of the things that Chris Leach said when he was entering the process of hiring a head coach was tactical flexibility. In terms of what we've seen in game one and game two, is this a home and away strategy, or is it a game to game, in your opinion? I know super small sample size, maybe not the most fair question, but in terms of what you've seen so far, like what's your take?
So one of the things that very clearly Lucci has picked up a bit is the fact that there was a whole group of people dedicated to tactical and data and video, analysis around the national team.
Mhm.
He's clearly picked up a lot of understanding about how to create situations that are in your favor. He did it in the Atlanta game by deciding after the 60th minute that I'm going to put a lot of fresh legs on, and I'm also going to defend in a certain way, and made changes to the defensive structure. And again, it took a couple, really world-class shots from Almada to be able to get
Right.
around that. And then the second game, we saw him make adjustments to the way that Vancouver pressed, as we talked about. So while he's got his style of play that he wants to play, I can also see that he is flexible,
Mhm.
not just game to game. And he's got Ian Russell as his assistant coach, who is doing that competitive analysis. So he's got a coach kind of focused in on analyzing the other team, who's got experience as a head coach
Right.
in USL, and has been an assistant for a long time in this league, and is good at doing that type of competitive analysis. And then being able to say, okay, here's the best way to play Atlanta, and it works for a while, and then it doesn't, and you make adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Here's the best way to play Vancouver, and it works for a while, and then it doesn't, and then you make adjustments. And so that's I think what's really heartening so far is Lucci's ability to kind of recognize the situation, his assistants to get him information about what's going on and what kind of adjustments might be able to be made, when to bring on certain players and such. We saw 5 subs in game 1. We only saw 2 subs in game 2. So, what we've seen is that there's not a blueprint, and we're sticking with the blueprint regardless of how the game is going.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually going to make these adjustments. And I think you have to be pleased with seeing that so far if you're Chris Leach.
The big issue that we've seen from the Earthquakes, obviously in general, last year they went their first 7 games without a win. Game 8, April 23rd versus Seattle was the first one, but home wins didn't come before that. 2021, home wins an issue. Good on the road, not winning at home. They're 1-for-1 here in this season. They've got Colorado coming up. Part of my contention is you're supposed to beat Vancouver and Colorado at home. If they do beat Colorado this weekend, does any of the hope that we feel at this point start to turn into confidence for this team, like reestablishing PayPal Park as a place that is there? This is the fortress, the castle, the shelter, whatever you want to apply to it, where, yeah, like back in Dominic Kinnear's era, losses didn't happen a whole lot at PayPal Park. It's been since that point when he was let go early in 2017 where we've seen more of those losses at home.
I agree. I think it is an opportunity to build some early confidence that when we're at home, it's our place. We're going to be able to get the results that we're looking for. And at the worst case, we're going to walk out with a draw, but more often than not, we're going to walk out with 3 points. And I think you have to have that mentality in Major League Soccer. It's an environment where you've got a distinct home field advantage. You have to take advantage of that. The average in the league is that half the time the home teams win. Another quarter of the time they get a draw, and 25% they lose on average.
And I'll point out that road win rate goes down as we get later into the season. I looked into this a while back and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it does, because teams now understand a bit more how to play you. They're able to kind of take advantage of that. And so when you're at home, I think if we get through this first set of games and the Earthquakes are taking 3 points at least half the time, and then average would be pretty good for this team if they can get mid-table. They're in the playoffs. 9 teams make the playoffs out of
right.
What, 14, I think it is. So if 9 teams are making the playoffs out of 14 and you're mid-table, you're in the playoffs. And that's Lucci's year 1 stated goal was we need to make the playoffs. So I'm going to be looking to see how that sets up. At the same time, we want to see that there are some points that are going to be taken from being on the road, that they're at least getting some draws, that they're getting a win enough that it allows them to continue to be able to at least be mid-table or a bit better.
I know you got stuff to do, Jamon, so I will let you go. But before I do so, where can people check out your work?
Well, I do some writing. I did a Quakes preview for AmericanSoccerAnalysis.com at Analysis Evolved. If you like analytical type things in the world of soccer, check that out. I also write a bit for Quakes Epicenter, and I have 3 preseason articles out there. If you want to see like how we got to this point, how we kind of got through preseason and building out some of these improvements. We kind of talked people through the process of what needed to happen in order to get there. And I think the team executed pretty well on that. And then finally, we have a post-game show, the Aftershock post-game show at youtube.com/Quakes Epicenter. You can subscribe to that, and we put out a link, and usually have 3 or 4 people every post-game, plus Lucci Gonzalez's press conference. We get to usually talk to a player. We do it live on the show. We take a lot of fan comments and share those throughout the show as well. It's a pretty good time. People enjoy it. And if you want a good post-game show, come join us.
Right on, Jamon. Well, I appreciate your time as always. I'm sure I will see you on the press conference a little bit later today with Lucci, and I will see you soon. All right.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate the time.